I fell in love with a mountain. I mean, my wife still reused the fact that I fell in love with a mountain. And like she became the second love of my life, and like mountain became the first love of my life. And I just promised myself that I'm going to come back and get on top of the world one day. Of course, mountain willing. And I think again the concept here was what I kind of saw in Sherpa Tenzing, and this has to be in my context, right? Am I saying climbing Everest is impossible? No. Thousands of people have already done it. But was it impossible in my context? Yes, it was impossible in my context. 110 kilos, obese, unhealthy software engineer with zero genetic predisposition towards climbing any mountains in his life or doing any of these things in his life. I think at that point, it felt like impossible. And to me, it was going on a journey to make the impossible possible. And that's where I kind of started on this journey of Everest. And I do remember this one line that my expedition leader from that October of 2010 trek to Everest base camp, his name is Tim Rippel. And I remember sitting in the dining tent and asking Tim, hey Tim, I want to climb Everest, and what's the secret? How can I get ready? And Tim was like, Kuntal, to climb to the top of the world, you need a top of the world mind and you need a top of the world body. And when I came home, I knew that I had neither top of the world body, I had neither top of the mind. Actually, far, far, far away from that. And so, to a certain, in a certain way, the journey was also about creating a top of the world body and mind.
Yeah.
And that is what Everest represented to me. Everest is such a symbolic thing. It's not just a mountain to me. It is this journey of becoming a better version of myself. Like, you showed the photo of Kuntal 1.0 to Kuntal 2.0. But I think that Kuntal 2.0 was created when I went on this journey of climbing Everest, and everything that happened during this entire journey. But I have to tell you, one thing. I have to tell you, like, one of the big learnings that I have from this entire journey. Actually, let me backtrack. Let me, bring the vegan angle also into this. Two things into it. I know that we have like less time, but I'm still going to try and discuss these two angles. So, angle one is, yes, in the hindsight, I can tell you a lot of stories. In the hindsight, I can tell you a lot of takeaways. In the hindsight, I can share, oh, great, don't give up. Oh, there's going to be a lot of adversity. Oh, you have to adapt, and all these marketing jargons, or these business jargons. I can like say all these things. Great, all of these are amazing. The single most reason why I climbed Everest is it was a calling. It was a deep calling that I could not have said no to. Imagine if you wake up and the very first thing in front of your eyes is Everest. You sit down and you start your computer screen, but you can see Everest in that. You sit down and you eat the food, but in our food you can see Everest. Entire day, all that occupies your life is Everest. Even when you sleep, you dream of climbing that mountain. And this does not go away. It continues for days, weeks, months, now continuing for decades. This is how much of a calling it was, a deep calling it was. I had to follow the calling. And so I can say in the hindsight a lot of things. This is why I climbed Everest. It made me a better human. It made me a better version of myself. All of that great. But that has all happened in hindsight. The reason why I went on the journey is because there was a calling. I had to go on the journey. I had to follow this calling. And the second thing is that when I announced to the world that I'm going to climb Everest and I'm going to do it as a vegan, there was a lot of pushback in the beginning, because everyone got back to me saying that, Kuntal, you need to eat meat. Kuntal, you need to eat dairy. Kuntal, you need to eat eggs.
Well,
In your training as well as on the mountain. In the training, so that you can build that body and you can build that fitness that can help you climb the mountains. And
mhm.
potentially on the mountains, so that you can recover faster, so that it can keep you warmer and it can give you energy. All sorts of reasons being given to me. Started reading a lot of mountaineering literature. I could not find anything around veganism and Everest, or veganism and high altitude mountaineering. I even I don't think it has ever happened to in my life that I've gone and typed anything on Google and gotten zero results. But I
Hmm.
typed vegan Everest and I didn't get any results. This was back in 2010.
Right.
So it was that, like, it was that out of the place where I was like trying to do something that had never been done before, and that I was in no shape to do it. Which is why there was potentially a lot of pushback that, hey, you are not going to be able to do it. A, you're not in shape, uh, and then you have a diet which is probably going to be nutritionally lacking, or at
Yeah.
least that was the myth that was that was very prevalent, and quite prevalent even today in a lot of circles, to be very frank. And to me, I was very certain I am going to climb this mountain as a vegan or not do it at all.
Hmm.
And to me, when someone says eat meat, I think of it as eat protein, or drink milk, eat calcium, or eat eggs, eat some better micronutrition. And having researched the plant-based world, and also having a couple of really good nutrition coaches and cookbook authors back then, one of them being Happy Herbivore, who's Lindsay Nixon, who's a very good friend, she being around, and she kind of helping me out during the initial portions of the journey, where she said, look, this is all nonsense. You want to fuel, here's how you can fuel, and you'll just be fine, just try it out. And I tested it out on a smaller mountain. I
Hmm.
tested it out on a Himalayan mountain, and believe me, and I have said this many times, if I have to build a list of 1,000 things, or let's say 100 things that were challenges to me that I faced on Everest or faced during the last decade of my mountaineering journey, I think vegan diet was like literally non-existent on any of the challenges list that I can come up with, especially vegan diet. Because if you go and see the diet itself, a vegan diet or a diet that can be followed on the mountain, it is anyways very, very heavily dependent on carbohydrates. So let's say if you look at what some of the best climbers in the world eat, and who are the best climbers? They are the Sherpa guides.
Yeah.
So Sherpa guides eat a lot of potatoes,
Hmm.
they eat a lot of lentils, they eat a lot of rice, and meat is almost always on the side. So if 80 to 90% of their calorie intake is coming from just plants, and it is merely about like 10% of their calorie intake coming from animals, it was very clear to me that it is very, very possible to even eliminate the 10% if just someone is willing to try it out.
Yeah.
And I was willing to try it out because I wanted to do it in that style. And I tried it out and I realized, heck, this is a no-brainer. Why is everyone not doing this? So, but the conditioning and the myths are so ingrained, have been so ingrained since so many decades or potentially even centuries, that it's going to take a while. It's going to take a lot of hard work on all of us together across the world to kind of dispel these myths and debunk this conditioning. But it is very doable, and it's already happening. The movement has gone mainstream, it's exponentially growing across the world. But getting back to my mountaineering journey, these were the two aspects. A, it was a calling, and B, I had to do it without eating or wearing an animal.
Right.
Now, I did summit Everest in 2016.
Hmm.
On May 19th at 9:30 in the morning, I was standing on the top of the world, and I was very strong. I'm not, going to be. I'm not here to like boast about myself, but I did it in style. I was super strong on the top of the mountain and enjoying my time. But I do remember that when I came back home, I think that was the time when people started inviting me to a lot of talks. And I remember when they would invite me on the stage, the invitation would always be first vegan in the world, welcome him. And I would go on the stage and it would be like, no, I'm not the first vegan in the world. It was always in my mind, always in my mind. And the reason being, when I stood on top of Everest, I was wearing a one piece jacket on my body, which was made from feathers of a slaughtered geese. And I could not have claimed to be a vegan if I was wearing a dead animal on my body. That's not what a vegan would do, but I did that. Not that I didn't try to find a replacement for that jacket or an animal free jacket, it just didn't exist. No one had built it, no one was selling it, no one was willing to build it, no one was, there was just simply non-existent. And
Hmm.
I tried very hard for 4 years. I even remember asking the folks at PETA, whose headquarters are right opposite North Face headquarters. I literally had them go over to the next building, do a presentation on my behalf. They came back saying North Face rejected your your proposal. And I'm like,
Really?
okay, what? So I
Wow.
went and I climbed Everest,
Hmm.
but I can stand here and tell you that that was the biggest failure of my life, unfortunately, in 2016. I should not have climbed that mountain. I should have tried harder. And I tried harder after I came back because my conscience, didn't let me sleep. I lost my sleep literally. And all the time I was thinking, how can I just get this out that I'm not the first vegan in the world? And sometimes you're getting all this exposure and you want to use all this exposure to talk about animals and talk about veganism, but then you also know that all of that is, I don't deserve it because I was not even the first vegan to climb Everest because no one has ever done it.
Kuntal,
So,
break the suspense. Tell us what happened the second time.
I
I
worked with a company called Save the Duck, and Save the Duck is an Italian gear company. They make active wear for cold weather, and they kind of, I wrote to them out of chance. They responded to my Facebook message. I got on a call with the chief marketing officer, and she said, "We'll build a jacket for you."
Wow.
And after 8 months of research and development with the chief designer and a lot of back and forth, in April of 2018, I had the first synthetic jacket of the world with me. The only problem being who's going to test it because it had never been tested in even -5 degrees temperatures before. So I knew that I was going to test it. And I climbed a mountain called Lhotse in 2018. It's a 28,000 feet mountain, the fourth tallest mountain in the world.
Mhm,
Climbed it. I was cozy, I was warm and totally safe on top of that mountain.
mhm.
And that's when I realized now climbing Everest is only a matter of when it's going to happen, not how it's going to happen, because how has already been figured out.
Yeah.
And next year, Save the Duck sponsored my climb, and they are an amazing company, super ethical, super animal friendly. They respect animals, care for animals, and they sponsored my climb to the top of Everest. And on May 23rd, I finally stood on top of Everest. I have been a vegan for 19 years from a dietary perspective. Unless someone has fed me any non vegan food after lying to me that it was vegan food, outside of that, I have never cheated once because I don't think it's something that I would, I don't agree with the concept of cheating at all with anything in life. So always been a vegan. But for in 20, on 23rd May, I was also a vegan from a gear perspective. I was 100% vegan on the top. And the way I had envisioned myself standing on top of Everest and talking about veganism, I think the biggest thing was in my mind, I was like so relieved that no animal had to suffer or die for my dream to come true, for me to stand on top of Everest.